I forgave my daughter even when she told everyone I was crazy to steal my inheritance. I was folding the bed linens when my daughter walked in with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She walked through my house like an appraiser, pausing at doorways, measuring my life in square feet. "Mom," she said, placing the clipboard on the dining room table where we once rolled out gingerbread dough, "we need to talk about your well-being." "Well-being, well?" I asked. "What's wrong with me?" She sighed too, slowly and practicedly. "No one is accusing you of anything. We're worried, you're forgetful, you're repeating the same story." "I've been repeating the same story for months," I said. "That your father's will is clear. Half the inheritance goes to the grandchildren's education, half to me, as long as I live." The clock on the wall ticked loudly, my pulse quickening. "And as long as I'm alive, I don't plan to make any new will." She glanced at her tablet. "I met with Mr. Carver, my father's lawyer. He agrees it's time to appoint a guardian. He will protect you." "Protect me?" "From what?" I asked. "From the inheritance?" She slid the package across the table. "A cognitive assessment. We're just checking you out to reassure everyone. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and let us know in the comments what time it is where you're listening to this story." "Reassure everyone," she said. "The neighbors who stopped waving, the cousin who called in a hushed voice to ask how I was really doing. How does a rumor spread through a city faster than a fire?" Now I saw the path. The lost bill, the left open can, the story of the burner left unlit, even though it wasn't. "You told them I wasn't feeling well," I said quietly. "I told them I was worried." Her eyes glistened, almost wet, but they didn't lose their composure. "You always trusted me to do what was best." "Best for whom?" The question soared to the ceiling and returned. She stood and went to the living room, to the locked cabinet where the family papers rested like a spine. "Taxes are complicated. The house needs some work. The market is booming right now." Her fingers slid over the wood. "We can make things simpler." I remembered her at 6, chin up, insisting on tying her own shoelaces. At 13, slamming the door and swearing she'd never be like me. And at 32, shaking from the divorce, sleeping on my couch while I cooked soup and made promises. I forgave her every time. The money lent, the harsh words, the silence. Forgiveness had become our currency, but now she was spending my name. How could my own daughter do this to me? I thought, and then heard my mother's voice. "Start counting. When you're scared, think about what you still have." I still had the original will and her father's letter tucked behind the frame of our wedding photo. I still had the nurse from church who saw me at the bank the day the rumor about the refinanced loan started spreading, saw me deposit the check instead of returning it. I still had the neighbor boy I hired every spring who could swear on my ladders, my ledgers, my records. I still had a quiet habit of writing documents twice and storing them in different places, a habit that irritated my husband and could now save me. "I'll sign up for the evaluation," I said, picking up the tablet. My voice was even. "We'll do everything right." She smiled then, quick and relieved. "You'll thank me one day." I walked her to the door, watched her car back down the drive. Only when the taillights disappeared did I unlock the cabinet and take out the black notebook I hadn't touched in years. On the first page, under a list of apple varieties we'd planted the summer after she was born, I wrote a new entry in a careful hand. Inventory, names, dates, signatures, patterns of lies, witnesses, plan. Because if she was willing to call me crazy to take what was mine, she had forgotten who taught her to think. And she had no idea what I keep in my head when I'm quiet. I did not sleep that night. I brewed tea, I didn't drink, and lined the empty mugs along the counter like chess pieces I might move later. When the sun split the blinds, I had a list in the black notebook: names, dates, tasks, what I could control. My husband used to say that when your hands shake, give them work. So I gave my hands a morning. First, the cupboard. I pulled the wedding photo from the wall and slid a paring knife under the cardboard back. The letter he'd written me after his last surgery was still there, sealed with the same old-fashioned wax he'd insisted on using for fun, the color of cherries. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew the words by memory. We had read it together the night he wrote it, because he did not like surprises, even the loving ones. If there's a day when our daughter is in trouble and chooses you as the problem, he'd told me, follow the ledger, not the tears. I had wanted to argue. She was our girl, the one who ate plums in the hammock and sang to the dog, but he'd tapped the notebook and said, Ma, promise me. I folded the letter back into its hiding place and slid the photo into the frame again. Second, church. I called Ruth, the nurse who kept the prayer list and the blood pressure cuff. She answered on the second ring. Good morning, she said. Everything all right? I need you to come by today if you can. Bring your calendar and that little device you use to measure minds. She laughed, then stopped. Do you mean the mini mental test? Honey, that's not... What's going on? I'll tell you when you get here, I said. And Ruth, don't tell anyone you're coming. Please, third, the bank. I called Mr. Hahn at the branch down on Main. He had watched me roll coins with my husband for 3 decades and always looked my husband in the eye when he asked questions. When I told him who I was, he greeted me with my married name and waited. I explained in a low voice that there might be movement on the accounts I had with my husband's estate, and if any papers arrived bearing a new signature with my name on them, if any checks looked odd, or if any lines of credit were opened, he should not act on them without calling me first. He listened without interrupting. Understood, Sho, he said. We have elder protection protocols, and I can put a note on your file. Are you safe? Yes, I said. It surprised me, saying it, but I might need someone to look at a signature later. Then I'll be that someone, he said. And Mrs. Hale, if anyone tells you you're overreacting, you're not. Fourth, the neighbor. I called Marco, the boy who had once carried birdseed in his pockets and was now a man who ran a landscaping company with a field truck older than both of us. He'd grown up next door and still called me Mrs. H. I asked him if he could come that afternoon with his phone, his honest eyes, and his best memory. I can be there at 1, he said. Do I need to bring tools? Just your patience, I said. The last call was the hardest. I dialed my daughter's number slowly. My hands were steady, but my stomach was a drum. She answered on the 3rd ring, polished and bright. I told her I'd booked a cognitive evaluation for the following week, that I wanted to do it by the book, and that in the meantime we should start looking at the house. Repairs, lists, all the things she said were complicated. I asked her to come by at 2. That's perfect, she said quickly. I'll bring the maintenance checklist. We can really get things moving. Bring whatever you need, I said. I'll brew coffee. After I hung up, I set my phone on the counter, opened the back door, and stepped into the orchard. The trees were leafless and thin, winter honest, every flaw unhidden. I did not feel small standing among them. I felt exactly my size. The air had that low, clean cold, and the smell of wet earth that settles at the turn of season. I walked row by row and didn't count them. Counting would have taken too long. I had my list instead. I was not powerless. I was the woman who knew where the old ledgers were buried in a drawer under placemats no one ever used, and which neighbor could be trusted with a spare key, and how to tether a ladder when the wind brags. I had done hard things alone. This was just another, with paperwork. Ruth arrived first, a wool hat slouched over her gray curls, cheeks pink from the cold. I let her in and poured coffee she did not want to drink, but held anyway to warm her hands. I want you to do that test today, I said. All of it. And I want you to write down the score and the time. She frowned. You don't need that unless a doctor requests it. I need it because my daughter brought me a different kind of test, I said, and told her everything, the clipboard, the talk of guardianship, the phrase protect you. Ruth listened, lips pressed together, eyes on my face as if checking for drift. When I finished, she nodded once, brisk and practical. Then we'll document before they do, she said. She had me count backward by 7s and remember 3 words after a conversation about grocery items. She had me draw a clock and place the hands at 10 past 11, which annoyed me because the clocks in my house all tick digital now. She asked me to name animals and repeat phrases. I answered in a voice that felt like my own and watched her check boxes. When she was done, she showed me the score and made 2 copies, the kind of belt and suspenders approach that would have made my husband proud. She tucked one into her purse and handed me the other. "Consider this insurance," she said. Then her face softened. "I'm sorry you have to do this." "I'm sorrier," I said, and we hugged with the carefulness of women who know exactly how much a back can take. Marco came right on time, boots leaving a wet trail on the mat. He took a slow look around, taking the house in with the same patience he used to give to the bird nests we'd find in spring. I told him I needed his testimony, not in court, just in life. If anyone asked about my memory, he was to tell them how I had refused to pay an invoice from him because it listed fewer pruning hours than he had actually worked because the numbers didn't add up. If anyone asked about my balance, he was to tell them how I'd climbed the ladder last summer while he waited below, ready but never needed. If anyone asked whether I seemed confused, he was to tell them all the times I'd remembered his mother's birthday when he forgot. "Got it," he said, face getting that serious look young men get when they understand they've been entrusted with something that matters. "Do you want me here when she comes?" "No," I said, "not today." I glanced toward the living room where the locked cabinet waited like a witness. "But I do want you to do one more thing." He looked ready to lift furniture. I smiled despite myself. "Hide this flash drive under the 3rd stone in the little wall by the bird bath," I said, slipping him a thumb drive the size of a fingernail. "The footage is empty right now, but it won't be by tonight. If that drive is ever taken, I want you to know where the second one is." He didn't ask questions. He nodded, tucked it into his pocket, and left to rearrange stones by the bird bath in a pattern only we would recognize later. At 1:55, I boiled water. At 1:58, I straightened the stack of coasters I never used. At 2 exactly, my daughter walked in smelling like expensive vanilla and winter air. She swept me into a hug that brushed my shoulder with the warmth of her coat and then moved away too quickly, eyes already in the corners of rooms. "You look good," she said, tone making it sound like a compliment after illness. I brought the maintenance list and a spreadsheet. "We'll start with simple things," I said. "You said the taxes were complicated. Show me." She unfolded a printout and angled it toward me like flashcards. Columns, numbers, red circles. "You have 3 accounts," she said. 2 checking, 1 savings. The estate account has to be consolidated with your primary. We'll need power of attorney, just for administrative stuff, until the court finalizes guardianship. Standard. Then the house, well. She glanced at the ceiling. Inspections, permits, necessary repairs, disclosures. It's a lot to juggle on your own. I looked at her hands. Her nails were neat, pale. Those hands had braided my hair when my husband had been stroking my forehead in the ICU, both of them trying to steady me. Those hands had slapped a steering wheel the day her first husband left. Those hands were now stacked on my dining table like she was claiming a poker pot. "What if I don't consolidate?" I asked conversationally. "What if I keep 2 separate accounts because it helps me track different streams of income and follow through, like the ledger I kept with your father?" Her jaw flexed. "Mom, I'm just asking," I said gently. "Do you trust me to listen to your advice if there are no court orders? Couldn't we do this together?" I lifted my eyes to her face. "Or is there a reason you need papers that say I can't be trusted?" Her gaze did not flicker, and I learned something she had practiced in the mirror. "You've always done everything yourself," she said. "Maybe it's time to let someone take care of you." I leaned back, held her eyes. Why does the person taking care of me need access to all my accounts? "So there aren't gaps," she said quickly. "Bills. Emergencies. It's just efficient. The word lay across the table like a knife. "Let's do this," I said, as if conceding. "I'll keep the accounts as they are until the evaluation next week. If the doctor says I need help, I'll sign whatever you want. In the meantime, show me the list of repairs you think we should do. I'll start getting quotes." Her smile softened. She believed she'd won something. She pulled a second sheet out of her stack: roof, gutters, foundation cracks, water heater, a list that read like a diagnosis. While she talked, I followed along, asked sensible questions, wrote down names of contractors. She was efficient. She knew prices, times, sequences. It was almost a kindness, how prepared she was. When she left, I sat in the stillness she'd left behind. The test next week would not be the one she brought. I had already booked the neurologist Ruth swore by, the one who didn't skim. I'd invited my friend from book club, who used to be a court reporter, to sit in the waiting room and note times. I had a plan to slip into Mr. Hansbranch after the appointment and make a small, purposeful change to an account that would require my presence in person to undo. Every thread I held would be tied to a knot only I could untie. It was not sabotage. It was proof. The next morning, things began to happen in a pattern that would have looked like coincidence if I hadn't been waiting for it. The gas burner was left on, but I smelled it when I came downstairs. The mail, which had always been stacked on the hall table, suddenly arrived in a box on the porch with an envelope already opened. An insurance offer in my name with big words like qualify and urgency. And a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in months rang the bell to ask if I needed help because my daughter was worried. And then, 3 days later, wedged into the bundle of circulars and catalogs and bills, a notice from a bank I didn't use that mentioned a home equity line of credit application pending. I read the letter twice and then set it down on the table like a piece of raw glass. The dates were recent, the name was mine. There wasn't a loan number yet, only a case file. What do you do when you are looking at the future someone is building for you without your consent? You build a different one faster. I drove to my bank in my husband's truck because the weight of it steadied me. Mr. Hahn took me into his office the way you move a fragile thing you hope is actually strong. I put the letter on his desk between us and told him what I thought was happening. He typed notes carefully, jaw tense. You need a layer of protection that doesn't depend on anyone's permission, he said. Have you considered a trust? My husband didn't like trust, I said. He said they made honest men look slippery. Honest men are not your problem, he said gently. A revocable living trust would let you put the house and accounts in an entity where you are the trustee. You still control everything, but no one can sell your house with a forged document because the deed is to a trust, and the bank will require the original trust papers to act. Anyone bringing a power of attorney would be told it's not sufficient. He slid a brochure across the desk and then a list of attorneys who didn't play golf with Mr. Carver. Pick one, he said. Today. I left with a name circled and the kind of feeling in my chest that comes after a storm, raw, aired out, a little sore and stronger for what survived. On the way home, I stopped by the church and found Ruth in the kitchen, arguing gently with a blender that had given up on smoothies. I told her about the loan letter and the trust. She wiped her hands and hugged me hard. I'm proud of you, she said. But I hate that I have to say that. Do you want me to come to the evaluation? Yes, I said, but I'd like to go somewhere else first. We went to the county clerk. The woman at the counter had a sweater with sequined snowflakes and a pen with a plastic flower attached. I asked to see whether any documents had been filed on my house in the last month. She looked me up, looked up the address, and then hesitated in a way that made my spine feel like ice. There was a notice of intent to list, she said, voice going formal, the way people speak when they want to sound like they are not personally involved. From a realtor out of town. It's not an official listing, just a preparatory filing some agencies make with us to establish a marketing timeline. Who signed it? I asked, though I already knew. She spun the screen toward me so I could see. The name was mine, written in a tilt that looked almost like my hand if you squinted. The realtor field was filled in with a firm I'd never heard of and a number I recognized as my daughter's. I thanked the woman at the counter and walked outside into air so sharp it made my teeth ache. Ruth's hand found my elbow without asking. They're moving fast, she said. So am I said, faster. The next days braided together like hair, the neurologist appointment where I remembered 5 words after a 10-minute conversation about stamps and named 12 animals in a minute, the lawyer with a careful voice who sat with me at his round table and built the trust in an afternoon because I had every paper, every deed, every account detail he needed, the conversation with my daughter where I sounded a little vague and apologetic and asked her to plan the evaluation she wanted because I was forgetting which one was which made her eyes warm, as if she believed likelihood had converted into certainty. She scheduled her test for the day after mine, very early, so we can start fixing things. She offered to pick me up. I told her I'd drive. That night, in the orchard, I stood with my coat open and the sky full of nothing but cold and the smell of soil. The house lights made dim squares on the lawn. I felt something that was not anger exactly, though anger lived in it. It was older than that. It was the protective rage of a woman who has been told to take her hands off the things she built, the things she loved, because someone younger has decided they know better. It was the memory of handing a child a coin and teaching her the difference between spend and save, and then watching her spend my name. I do not believe in vengeance for its own sake, but I believe in consequences. The morning of the first evaluation, Ruth drove me. "We're not giving anyone a chance to claim you got lost," she said, buckling her seatbelt like armor. The neurologist asked questions in a kind voice and did not rush me. He peered into my eyes and had me walk heel to toe down a line of tape on the floor the way school children do to learn balance. When he finished, he smiled at me in a way that felt like sunlight. "You are as sharp as you think you are," he said. "Can I ask why you were concerned?" I thought about telling him everything, and then I thought about the report in his hand and the way a rumor would bounce off it like rain off a roof. "Family stress," I said. "Your report will be in my patient portal today." He nodded and printed me a copy on the spot, signed in ink. I watched him sign it. I slipped it into the black notebook like a leaf between pages. The next morning, I wore the sweater my daughter had given me for Christmas, and a scarf my husband had always hated because he said it snagged, and the pearls my mother had left me because they made me feel like I had company even when I didn't. I told Ruth I'd be fine and drove to the strip mall where my daughter had scheduled her evaluation, Suite 4C, between a nail salon and a shipping store. The waiting room smelled like citrus cleaner. A woman at the desk wore a white jacket without a name tag. My daughter was already there with a folder and a pen. She kissed my cheek. "Are you ready?" she asked. Her voice was tender. If tenderness could bruise, mine would have been purple. "Always," I said. The evaluator introduced herself as Dr. Lane and did not offer a last name. She had a laminated badge that read consultant. The test was shorter than the one I'd taken the day before. It asked different questions. She asked my daughter to sit in with us, to provide collateral information, which felt like having a third-grade teacher hover over a quiz. I missed a question on purpose, then another, stumbling in a way that would look like slippage to someone who wanted slippage. I made sure to ask to use the restroom and took a minute longer than necessary before returning to my chair. When it was over, she said, "We'll have a preliminary report this afternoon. The full report will take a week." "Preliminary is fine," my daughter said quickly. "We're just trying to reassure the family." I smiled and thanked them both and walked out not feeling reassured. I sat in my truck and counted 10, 20, 30. Then I went to see the attorney who had built the trust with me 2 days earlier and put a copy of the neurologist's report in his hands. "If anyone files anything with the court claiming I need a guardian before the weekends," I said, "I want this attached to whatever you need to attach it to." "Oh," he nodded. "It will be," he said. "Come back tomorrow and sign the deed, transferring the house to the trust. We'll file it immediately. Once it's recorded, you will be trustee and beneficiary. That won't stop someone from trying something stupid, but it will slow them down enough to catch them." Slow them down. Catch them. The words lay in me like anchors. At 3 that afternoon, my daughter called. She put her phone on speaker, which made me uneasy until I realized what she was doing. She wanted me to hear it out loud, the way she wanted others to hear it. Publicly and unequivocally. Dr. Lane says you scored in the borderline range, she said, voice heavy with a sadness so smooth it had to be rehearsed. It's not a diagnosis, Mom. It's a concern. She recommends temporary guardianship. Just while we get through the financial stuff, it protects you. Protects me, I repeated softly. From what? From mistakes, she said. From people who might take advantage. Are you one of those people? I asked, and the silence that followed had a shape. Of course not, she said finally, and added quickly, I've scheduled a notary to bring the forms by tomorrow. We'll just put some protections in place while we sort things out. After we hung up, I stood at the window with my black notebook and put my finger on the line that said plan and then wrote second hook. It was a phrase my husband had loved when we watched fishing shows on Saturday mornings. They're throwing a second hook here, watch the line. I understood it now. If they couldn't get what they wanted through one channel, they'd open another. The second hook in my story would be mine, and it would hold. The next morning, my daughter arrived with a notary whose mouth was the tight shape of someone who swallows often. I had already moved the deed to the trust at 9 when the clerk's office opened. The lawyer had handed me a stamped copy on my way out. The ink was not even dry when the notary sat at my table with a pen. We're just going to initial and sign here and here, my daughter said, pushing a packet toward me. This gives me temporary guardianship for 12 months or until the court reviews. It's just so I can help. You don't have to worry about anything. I need to read it, I said and did, quietly. It was a guardianship petition, not a temporary anything. It referenced preliminary medical findings from Dr. Lane. It contained a line that jumped like a fish. Certain assets may be liquidated to defray the cost of care. My house had been described as an asset appropriate for liquidation. I'll need my reading glasses, I said. I stood and went to the cabinet in the living room where the family papers were. I unlocked it with my back turned to them and took out my glasses, sliding them on like armor. I returned to the table and looked at my daughter's face very carefully. She had the expression of someone who wants to comfort you into consenting. I did not want comfort. I wanted clarity. I have a doctor's report, I said, laying the neurologist's signed assessment on the table. It says I am competent. I took this 2 days ago. Ruth can attest to the appointment, so can the receptionist. This test you brought me doesn't overrule that. Her eyes flicked to the paper, then away. We can get a second opinion, she said, as if that were kindness. This is the second opinion, I said. I took yours yesterday. She swallowed, eyes flickering. It was the first crack I'd seen. Mom, you're being difficult. Difficult, I said. Is that what we call it when someone refuses to hand over their life? The notary shifted in her seat. Her mouth worked like she wanted to say something but had trained it not to. I'm not signing this today, I said. We can talk about help. We can talk about plans, but I am not signing my house away. My daughter's face changed in a way that hurt to watch because it was both familiar and new. The old girl who hated being told no, the woman who had learned to flip no into yes with a series of gentle wedges. If you won't agree to this, I'll have to file, she said. It will be messier. People will hear things. It will be on the record. So will the neurologist's report, I said. So will the deed to the trust. I laid the stamped copy on the table quietly, the way you lay a hand on a fevered forehead. Her eyes startled then, like a deer in a field when a branch snaps. You what? I did what you said, I said mildly. I simplified. The house is now in a trust. I am the trustee. So am I. Until and unless a court removes me, no one can sell it. Not even me without the original papers. Those papers are not in this house. The notary closed her purse with a soft click, the sound of a woman who would rather be somewhere else. My daughter stared at the copy as if it might retract itself. We can still do this, she said, voice softening again. We need to do this. We can do it together, I said. You want to help? Help me paint the porch, help me call roofers, help me find realtors when I'm ready to sell on my own terms. But do not tell people I am crazy. Do not file things for me. Do not take loans in my name. Her eyes shot up. What loans? The letter from the strange bank lay under the neurologist's report, just visible. I slid it out and tapped the date. This one, I said. Shall I call them while you're here? Ask about the application? Ask who filled out the online form with my mother's maiden name misspelled? She stood so fast her chair bumped the back of her knees. I have a meeting, she said. I'll call you later. She left without hugging me. The notary left without shaking my hand. The house was suddenly full of quiet and the smell of coffee gone bitter. I sat at the table with my black notebook and updated the lines. Neurologist's report and file, trust deed recorded, notary witness to refusal, daughter aware I know about the loan. Under plan, I wrote another word, trap. Not because I wanted to catch her, but because I needed to stop whatever she was building around me before it hardened into the walls of my life. The next move came quickly. A process server left a packet at my door the following afternoon. Petition for guardianship, filed by my daughter, supported by a preliminary report from Dr. Lane, and a letter from Mr. Carver, my late husband's attorney, asserting concern. I had not heard Mr. Carver's name in months. Seeing it in black ink felt like someone opening a window in winter. I called the new attorney, the one who'd built the trust. He told me we would respond with the neurologist's report and affidavits from people who saw me daily. He asked if I wanted to pursue the home equity letter with the police. Not yet, I said, and we both understood why. If someone had tried to open a line of credit and had been stopped by verification, a report now would alert them. I needed them to keep believing I was 2 steps behind. That night, I did something I had resisted for years because it felt like spying. I put a small camera in the living room, pointed at the cabinet with the papers. The feed went to a cloud account Marco had helped me set up. I told myself it was only for a week. I slept badly, dreaming I was back in a classroom I'd left decades ago, showing a test to a teacher who stamped it without reading, red ink spreading across the page like a spill. 2 days later, I had my second hook. I went to the grocery store in the afternoon, took my time choosing apples with the firm boredom of someone who is killing time on purpose, and came home to a front door just slightly askew, as if it had ended a thought it hadn't meant to say. No wood splintered, no glass broken. The camera would tell me more. I set the groceries down and walked the rooms. Nothing was obviously missing. Not the jewelry, not the small things people steal when they are in a hurry. The lock on the living room cabinet had a new scratch near the keyhole. In my kitchen, I opened my laptop and logged into the camera feed. The footage was clear, too clear. My daughter's silhouette moving through the house, keys in hand. Her face as she bent toward the cabinet, her phone pressed between her shoulder and ear while she tried a key and then another. Yes, the notary said she refused, she whispered. But I can get what you need. I know where she keeps them. A voice on the other end spoke, muffled but male. She nodded. I'll send photos first. If we can submit by Friday, the listing can go live next week. There it was, the second hook set. The first was the guardianship. The second was the sale. She believed one would snag me if the other didn't. And behind both, a shape I hadn't looked at directly yet because I hadn't wanted to. Mr. Carver. I sent the footage to my attorney. I sent a copy to Ruth, whose only reply was 3 words, I'm with you. I sent a copy to myself and a copy to Marco, who texted back a single word that was not profane but carried all the heat of profanity. Wow. Then I called my daughter. I found a scratch on the cabinet, I said mildly. Did you stop by? Her voice was quick to indignation. I told you I had a key, Mom. I dropped off the process server's packet with a note. I thought you weren't home. It's a good thing we trust each other, I said, as if trying the phrase on my tongue. I've always trusted you, she said. It was almost convincing. The next morning, I went to Mr. Carver's office, a place with the smell of dust and coffee and dark wood. He had aged in that gentle way some men do, thinner, smaller, a little softer in the jaw. He still wore his hair too long and fixed his glasses by pushing them up with one finger from the bridge. He smiled when he saw me and then lined his smile with concern. I hoped you'd come, he said. Your daughter has been very worried. I'm worried too, I said. I'm worried that you put your letterhead on a petition against me without speaking to me first. He looked sad. You've been difficult to reach, he said. She told me things that concerned me. She tells convincing stories, I said. Have you ever noticed? He did not answer. He folded his hands on his desk and waited for me to say something he could make notes about. My husband respected you, I said. He also wanted you to remember something after he died, that his wife kept 2 ledgers. The second one is with me. It has every conversation we had with you about the will, every instruction about the house, every list of what we meant to do and why. If you're going to write letters about my capacity, you should read the ledger where your name is written in my husband's hand. He blinked. May I? Not yet, I said. First, tell me something you know and something you think you know. Tell me whether you advise my daughter to file for guardianship. He cleared his throat. I advised her to seek advice, he said, too careful. And the home equity line? I asked. Did you advise her to apply for that? His face did something interesting then, the way a curtain twitches when a window is opened. He lifted his hands, then let them fall. I did not, he said. And if she did, that is, he paused. Ill-advised. Ill-advised. I imagined him writing it on a yellow legal pad and underlining it as if it were a safe word. I have a neurologist's report that says I'm competent, I said. I have footage of my daughter attempting to access my papers without my consent. I have a bank on alert. I have a trust. I came here out of courtesy. If you want to remain the kind of attorney my husband believed you were, step back now. If you don't, I will make your name part of this story in a way you can't control. He stared at the blotter on his desk and smoothed the edge with his finger. You always did scare me a little, he said softly, in the way capable women do. I'm not here to frighten you, I said. I'm here to save us both trouble. He nodded, a very small nod, like a nerve tick. I will withdraw my letter of concern, he said. I will write another to the court noting the neurologist's report. I will advise your daughter to stand down. Do more than advise, I said. Tell her that if she continues, you will not represent her. And call that consultant who signed the preliminary report and tell her to prepare for questions about her credentials. He swallowed. I did not hire her, he said. Your daughter did. Then tell your daughter that consultants without last names don't get to decide where I live, I said. Where do I send the ledger for you to look at? His hands made a slow tent. You can bring it tomorrow, he said. I'll make copies and return it immediately. I stood. I won't be bringing it, I said. You'll come to my house. And you'll bring a scanner that doesn't leave that office. He met my eyes then and held them. You always did scare me, he repeated. But this time there was something like respect in it. When I reached home, there was a message from the bank I didn't use. The home equity application had been withdrawn. I did not celebrate. I did something harder. I called my daughter and invited her to dinner. She said yes at once, as if she'd been waiting for the word. I could hear relief in it, like a horse turned toward home. I made the kind of meal that has heft. Pot roast, carrots, potatoes, the gravy the way my husband had liked it. A salad because I've learned with age that you should always add something green even when life is brown. I set the table with the good plates and the everyday spoons. I kept the camera on in the living room, not because I expected a crime, but because I intended a record. When she arrived, she looked tired and very beautiful in the way people look when they are a little desperate. We sat, we ate, we pretended it was an ordinary Wednesday. I've been thinking, I said after the second cup of coffee, about fairness, about help, about the grandkids. I want to do something generous, but I want guarantees. She leaned in. What kind of guarantees? This is my offer, I said. I will fund education accounts for the children in amounts that will take your breath away. I will hire someone to manage the repairs on the house and pay you a fair fee to coordinate, because you're right. There's a lot. I will meet you twice a week to make sure we're on track. In return, you will withdraw the guardianship petition. You will write a A letter to the court stating that you acted in haste and out of fear, and you will tell everyone you told that I am not crazy, that you were wrong. She stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed in a way that made her look smaller than she had a moment before. That's, she swallowed. That's a lot. It's also a second chance, I said. Do not confuse those. She wiped her eyes. I wanted to keep you safe, she said, voice breaking. And the money? She stopped. And the money? I repeated. It's a simple phrase with a long shadow. There were bills, she said. I was drowning. I would have thrown you a rope, I said quietly. You stole a boat. She covered her face with her hands for a moment, then looked up with that same quick brightness she used when she was a girl trying to charm her way out of trouble. If I agree, you'll do this? For the kids? Yes, I said. But I need something else. Tonight? What? Your phone, I said. Unlocked and placed on the table. She pulled back. Why? Because I need truth in this house, I said. If you are drowning, show me the water. We stared at each other. Then slowly, she took her phone from her bag and set it on the table. She looked at it the way people look at a thing that has betrayed them and expects to again. I slid it toward me and handed her a piece of paper I had prepared. It was a list of numbers with names, debts I suspected because I had once been the kind of mother who read expressions the way other people read weather. Start here, I said. Tell me what each is. Say it out loud. I need to hear it. And she did. The credit card opened after the divorce that had doubled. The medical bill she'd ignored because the word deferred felt like forgiveness. The loan from a friend at work whose interest rate would shame a loan shark. The new boyfriend's venture that had collapsed but left her co-signed on a line of credit. With each confession, she sagged a little, as if she'd put down a load in increments. I wanted to pick them up for her. I did not. I needed her to feel the shape of everyone. When she finished, the room was as quiet as the inside of a closed book. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. The worst thing about debt is the shame, I said. It makes people lie. It makes them small. Take the shame off and you can deal with the numbers. She cried then, the tears you can't place back in your head once they've started. I let her. I poured more coffee and didn't say the things that rose. How could you? Why didn't you come to me? How did we get here? Because the answers were obvious. Pride, fear, a culture that tells everyone that success is a thing you buy in installments. When she wiped her face, I took a breath. We can fix this, I said. But you must withdraw the petition tomorrow morning. You must send me a screenshot of the withdrawal confirmation and a signed statement to the court. And you must send your boyfriend a message ending whatever financial arrangement you're in. I'll dictate the words. She stared at me. You do that? I will not be blackmailed by my own child's fear, I said. I will be her mother. She laughed then, a sound like a hiccup. That sounds like you? I took her phone and dictated a message to the boyfriend whose name I had learned to say without grimacing. It was simple. This is over. I cannot pay your debt. Do not contact me for money again. I had her send it. The 3 dots appeared, then stopped, then appeared again. He wrote back something that was more noise than content. She put the phone on the table like a hot pan. The next morning, I waited for the screenshot that never came. At noon, my attorney called. She did not withdraw, he said. We have a hearing date. I sat down with the heaviness of a person who had believed for a moment and learned again why belief needs evidence. I called my daughter. She did not answer. I left a message that was not angry because anger gives people something to use against you later. It was factual, a ledger entry. You promised. You did not do it. The offer is withdrawn. An hour later, the bank I did not use called again, not the fraud department this time, but a manager, polite and precise. They wanted to verify a second attempt to open a home equity line. The agent had a name I recognized, the boyfriend. My anger did not rise, it clarified. I called Mr. Hahn and arranged a meeting. I called Ruth and asked her to come. I called Marco and told him to bring his honest eyes and his phone. We met in Mr. Hahn's office the next morning. My daughter was already there, looking smaller somehow, a bird on a snowy branch. The boyfriend stood beside her, hair pushed back with a kind of anxious style, hands restless. He tried to offer his hand to me. I looked at it and did not take it. Mr. Hahn sat behind his desk, tie knotted, mouth a straight line of intention. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I want to be clear. We will not open any line of credit without the account holder's presence and consent. There has been an attempt to alter the contact details on the account to reroute verification. We have blocked that. I invited you here because I hate phone tag and because I suspect this is a family matter that will turn into a legal one." "It already is," I said. "There's a guardianship petition pending." The boyfriend laughed, a small deflection. "This seems like overkill. We're talking about a simple loan." "We are not," I said. "We are talking about theft with a polite face." My daughter flinched. "Mom?" Mr. Hahn raised a hand. "Before this becomes a shouting match, may I show you something?" He turned his monitor slightly to display a form with fields. "This is the digital application for the home equity line. The IP address is logged. The browser fingerprint is logged. The device type is logged. Do not let the jargon confuse you. It's just proof. If law enforcement gets involved, they will have everything." The boyfriend smiled with his mouth, not his eyes. "Law enforcement? This is ridiculous." Mr. Hahn looked at him with the kind of steady stare that has moved many a person out of a branch. "Ridiculous is a word people use when they believe consequences are a rumor, and," he said, "they are not." I took out my phone and opened the camera feed. I had cued the minute where my daughter stood at the cabinet, phone at her ear, voice saying, "Listing can go live." I laid the phone on Mr. Hahn's desk and pressed play. The room filled with the small sound of someone betraying a person they believed was weaker. The boyfriend's mouth opened and closed. My daughter's eyes did the thing I had seen at the dining table, the shrinking. "I'm sorry," she said, words like stones dropping. I'm sorry. "I believe you," I said, and I did. "But apologies are not a plan." We went from there to the police station, not with handcuffs, not with drama. Quietly, with affidavits and a copy of the neurologist's report and the video and Mr. Hahn's file. The officer at the desk did not roll his eyes. He listened, he took notes, he explained that the district attorney would review and decide. He used the phrase elder exploitation, and hearing it applied to me felt like a bruise I had not noticed until someone pressed it. The hearing date came quickly. My attorney spoke in measured sentences that sounded like roads, clear, straight, leading somewhere. Mr. Carver stood up, thinner now, and withdrew his letter of concern with words that had been burnished by a night of worry. The judge was a woman with hair in a knot and eyes that had seen the whole spectrum of human behavior. She read the neurologist's report, watched the video, asked my daughter 2 questions that made her voice shake. Then she said something simple. Petition denied. She did not talk about morality. She did not talk about love. She talked about law. That was enough. Afterward, in the hall, my daughter reached for me. I let her. We stood there, 2 women who have the same hands. "I want you in my life," she said. "I don't know how to ask for that in a way that doesn't sound like asking for a favor." "You don't have to ask," I said, "but you have to tell the truth." She nodded. "I will," she said, and then, "I don't know how to fix what I broke." "You start small," I said. "You wake up and you keep your word every day until your word is good again. And you stop spending money you don't have. And when you feel the shame come up, you tell it that we don't do shame anymore. We do numbers." She let out a breath that seemed to see daylight for the first time. "Okay," she said. The district attorney pressed charges against the boyfriend a month later. Not a surprise, he had tried the same thing with someone else in another town. My daughter was named in the complaint as a cooperating witness. She told the truth to the police, to the court, to the neighbors she had lied to. She stood up in church and said the words people find hardest to say. "I was wrong. I believed the wrong person. I hurt the right one. I forgive myself, and I ask your forgiveness of me." I did not clap. I did not make a speech. I sat and felt the strange mixture of pride and sorrow that motherhood is made of. I had raised a girl who could stand and call herself wrong, I'd also raised the girl who had thought she could sell me. People brought casseroles. They always do when there is a crisis you can point to. What they don't bring casseroles for is the daily work afterward, the decisions that are not dramatic, the ropes you learn to tie in a storm and then keep tying through seasons that look calm but are not. I met my daughter twice a week, and we made a list that was not about betrayal, but about repair. She called creditors and negotiated interest rates by reading from scripts we wrote together. She canceled subscriptions that had bled her monthly with the efficiency of 1,000 tiny leeches. We sold 2 pieces of furniture she didn't need and put the money toward the smallest debt, paid it off, and celebrated by taking a walk instead of spending. We put numbers on paper until they became smaller. I set up education accounts for the children with a rule my husband would have loved. For every dollar I put in, my daughter would contribute $1 toward her own debt. Not the same dollars, different accounts, different goals, both honorable. It made her feel the connection between their future and her present in a way that was not punishment but instruction. I called the realtor who had filed the notice and told him to remove it from whatever list he kept and never to use my name without my voice again. He apologized with the speed of a man who had realized the distance between a commission and a complaint. I called Dr. Lane's office and asked for her last name and her license number. The receptionist stuttered. There was a pause, then a hang-up. My attorney took it from there. Weeks later, I received a letter from the state board thanking me for bringing an unlicensed practice to their attention. It did not satisfy me. It did something better. It took a person with smooth lies out of circulation, so she could not be used on someone who did not have a Ruth or a Mr. Hahn. When spring came, the orchard looked like a promise. The blossoms were not as thick as they had been when my husband was alive and the trees were younger, but they were flowers, and they carried the same smell, sweet with an undertone of earth. I climbed a ladder with Marco steadying the bottom and showed his new apprentice how to cut a branch without making the tree bleed. My daughter came on a Saturday with the children and brought lemonade and a cake she had baked herself. She asked which tree we should dedicate to their grandfather this year, a game we play where we name a tree for a person and watch it as if watching them. We stood in a row and chose, and she cried quietly as we did. "Mom," she said after the children ran down the hill, "are we okay?" I looked at her, at the tilt of her chin that had always been defiant and was now something gentler. "We're okay," I said. "We're not finished." "But we're okay?" "Do you forgive me?" she asked. And the question was a fragile thing, like a bird in a child's hands. "I forgave you before I knew what you would do," I said. That's what mother means in my language. Forgiveness is not permission. It is a way of being ready when someone returns. She nodded and took a breath that looked like a new habit. We never spoke about guardianship papers again. We spoke about lineage and chores and the way grief moves through a house like a draft some days and a furnace others. We spoke about the man she had left and how leaving sometimes looks like failing even when it is the bravest thing a person can do. We spoke about how debt makes people desperate and how desperation makes them cruel and how you can climb out without using someone else as a rung if you pay attention. I wrote my husband a letter that spring and put it behind the wedding photo with the one he had written me years earlier. It said, "I followed the ledger, not the tears." It also said, "I cried anyway." It said, "She came back and I let her." It said, "You were right. Roots hold if you plant them deep and cut the dead wood at the right time." It said, "The house is still ours." It said, "The children will remember the taste of apples." It said, "I did not let them move me." When summer came, people stopped asking if I was okay because the world had grown bored of that version of me. Good. I prefer to be boring to people at a distance and interesting only to those who have earned the right to hear my stories. I hired a contractor I trusted to fix the porch and laughed when he underestimated me and then learned what my husband used to tell people, that I am the person you want in your corner when the roof sags. The charges against the boyfriend resulted in a plea. He stood with his hands quiet at his sides and admitted what he had done. He got probation and a restitution plan that will take him years. That is not my problem. The restitution will go to a fund at the courthouse that helps people who don't have a Ruth or a Mr. Hahn. I insisted on that. My daughter watched the hearing and did not look at me for a long time afterward because facing one's complicity is a kind of sunburn. Everything you touch hurts. When she finally did look at me, her eyes were clear. "I won't make you small again," she said. "Neither will I said, and we smiled because we had both learned that protecting someone is not the same as making them smaller so you can carry them. Autumn came again, and the orchard did what it always does. It changed slowly until one morning it appeared to have changed all at once. We picked apples and baked pie, and I taught my granddaughter how to make a lattice that would not sag. She stuck her tongue out the way her mother had when she concentrated and asked if this was the way my mother had taught me. I said yes, because some lies are a hand over a wound until it heals. The truth was that my mother did not bake, but she taught me to count what I still had when I was frightened, and that had saved me more than a good pie ever could. In the evenings, I sat at the table with the black notebook and did something I had never done before. I wrote a chapter called After, and it had entries like call the roofer, pay the tax bill early, to teach the children how to read an interest rate, review the trust once a year, forgive again and again on purpose. It's not hard if you know where to look. The line item called plan had changed too. It no longer had the cruel efficiency of catastrophe. It had gentler instructions like how to plant tulips in fall with faith they will show their yellow mouths in spring. Sometimes when I washed strawberries for the grandkids, I would see my daughter on the patio, phone in her pocket, hands busy with the chalk suns the little ones drew, making them bigger with circles of color. She looked older and more beautiful and, more importantly, honest in a way that showed in her shoulders. She would catch my eye and tilt her head toward the orchard, the way my husband used to do, as if to say, "We did this. We kept it." And on the days when I felt very old, when the stairs made my knees complain and the letters on the bills seemed to have shrunk overnight, I would take out the neurologist's report, not because I worried about my mind, but because I liked the solidity of the signature. It reminded me that the truth is a thing you can put your finger on. I would lay it beside the deed to the trust and my husband's letter and the new letter I'd written and stack them together, light on, heavy on light, a tower of paper that held up a house. People sometimes ask me now, quietly, and at the end of church or over tomatoes at the farmer's market, how I managed to do what I did without tearing my family in two. The answer is not noble. It is that I was willing to let the person who had harmed me be the one to choose whether to be cut or mended. I held the thread, I offered the needle, I did not tell them where to put the stitch. That part was theirs. If you are an old woman reading this and someone tells you that you have lost your mind because they need you to lose it, ask for proof. Count what you still have. Call the banker who looks you in the eye. Invite the nurse who knows your pulse. Put your house in a place that can't be signed away in an afternoon. Keep 2 ledgers if you have to. Forgive like a habit and plan like a general. And when they mistake your quiet, force surrender, let them. It is the sound of roots gripping stone. My daughter comes every Thursday now with a list she has made, and we pick one thing and do it. She returns borrowed money with gratitude that does not feel like an apology, and I accept it with the dignity I want to teach her children. We do not use the words guardianship or capacity. We use words like porch and soup and budget and stay. When she leaves, she sometimes touches the wedding photo casually, like a benediction. She does not know about the letters behind it. She does not need to. They are not for her. They are for the woman I was the day she came into my kitchen with a clipboard and measures, who stood in her own house and felt the ground tilt. That woman did not break. She bent toward the truth and then straightened. She found the second hook before it caught her and set it herself. And if you are wondering whether I regret the strength I used, the traps I set, the way I let them think I was lost so I could find the path they hid, no, I regret the circumstances. I do not regret the way I walked them. Justice is not a word I use lightly. It is not the court date or the charge. It is the shape of a life after you have pulled it back into your hands and planted it firmly where it belongs. It is a house that smells like coffee in the morning and soil after rain. It is the quiet knowledge that when someone tried to name me crazy, I used my mind like a tool and built a place where that name could not stick. One evening in late winter, when the trees were nothing but dark lines against a bruised sky, my daughter and I stood on the porch and watched the kids chase each other's shadows. She leaned into me the way she had as a child, shoulder to shoulder. "You're stronger than I thought," she said. "Then you remembered," I corrected, and we both smiled because the difference mattered. Down the hill, the children kept laughing. In the house, the cabinet with the lock waited with its small, calm mouth. I had turned off the camera months ago. I no longer needed to watch the door to feel safe. Safety had moved back into my rib cage, the way it used to live there when my husband snored and the dog dreamed loudly and the orchard breathed under the moon. The wind picked up and smelled like damp bark and old apples. I pulled my daughter's scarf tighter around her neck. We did not speak for a long time. We didn't have to. We had done what few families manage. We had chosen to be worth saving, and then we had done the labor of saving. If you had told me a year ago that I would someday stand here with this woman, my daughter, after she told the town I was losing my mind, after she tried to move me like a thing, if you had told me I would stand with her and feel pride instead of defeat, I would have asked you, what kind of story ends like that? Now I can tell you, the kind where justice looks like a repaired net, the kind where forgiveness and consequence hold hands, the kind where the grandmother, who was supposed to be out of the way, learned to take up her space with a steadiness that turned other people's plans into paper, the kind where the truth did not roar, it simply stayed. I forgave my daughter even when she told everyone I was crazy just to steal my inheritance. I forgave her before she knew she needed forgiveness, which is the only way forgiveness works. But I did not hand her my life. I built a structure where she could come home. Then I stood in the doorway and waited, not with open arms, that's for stories that end too easily, but with the strength it takes to let someone open their own door. From here, you can see the orchard. The light comes later now. The trees look like patience. There will be blossoms soon, then fruit. I have already bought jars. I have already written labels. I have time. I have my mind. I have my house. I have my daughter, not as a keeper of my keys, but as someone who rings the bell and waits. And I have the quiet, steady fact of having done what needed doing without becoming the thing I fought. That is justice triumphant. It looks like this. Do you think I did the right thing? Let me know in the comments. If you liked my story, subscribe to the channel and like it. Thank you for listening to this story.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss